Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh and live in Studio West, joined by United States Senator Deb Fischer from the great state of Nebraska, part of the Big Ten, even though not always competitive. Good morning, Senator Fischer. Welcome. Good to have you.
Well, good morning, Hugh. Say that was a little harsh there on not being always competitive. So
Well,
we're hoping for the glory years to return.
I could be harsher if, Congressman Gallagher is coming along, and I usually just roll over Wisconsin. So, Senator, let's get to your op-ed, which posted just a couple hours ago over at Fox. It is eye-opening. It's about the Chinese Communist Party and General Secretary Xi's strategic weaponry buildup. And I knew about this intellectually, but the numbers you put here are astonishing. You want to summarize for the audience, because you are the ranking member on the strategic subcommittee of the Senate Armed Services Committee. What is Xi up to?
Well, thank you for bringing that up, Hugh. We have to recognize as a country, and the people of this country have to recognize the threat that China poses. With the balloons coming across the United States, the surveillance there across the continental United States, I think that woke a lot of people up. But China has been building up its nuclear enterprise, and we have been slow to modernize ours. When I look at what they have accomplished in a very, very short period of time, it is truly amazing. They are a pure competitor. They have a triad. They have a goal of tripling their arsenal by 2035. That's only a decade away. They have more ICBM launchers than the United States. They have bombers, bombers similar to the B-2, and they are building submarines. So this is something that people need to be aware of. And I don't put this out there to scare people, to terrify them, but instead to educate them about what we face. We've seen since the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, we've kind of been sidelined in this nation with our enterprise, our nuclear enterprise, and we cannot be, because it's the bedrock of our national security.
Now, Senator, I have asked a number of would-be presidential nominees, if the triad cannot be fully funded, which third of it do we not fund? Because we've got to do something. And I know the Columbia class, the B21, they're both in production. They're going forward. We're not doing it fast enough. I'm wondering if we're past the era of ICBMs, except for a second strike capability. You're the ranking member of the Strategic Affairs Subcommittee. What do you think about shrinking the missile leg of the triad in order to spend what we need on the most survivable legs of the triad?
Oh, I disagree with that completely. The triad, each leg of the triad, serves a unique purpose, and we have to have those ICBMs. For one thing, I personally believe it makes our adversaries take a step back and think about attacking the heartland of the United States, because that's where our ICBM silos are. That alone causes them to rethink any kind of aggressive action that they would have. It is also an extremely vital part. I don't think many people also realize, Hugh, that our bombers are not loaded. So in effect, right now, we have a triad, or we have a dyad with our submarines and our ICBMs. So there would have to be policy changes and buy-in from Congress to be able to change our posture when it comes to our bombers.
Well, Senator, I want to pursue this with you. I would build it all. I would spend the money, but we just spent $7 trillion in emergency spending, and none of it went to the industrial base to maintain the strategic deterrent we have, much less expand the B-21 production, the Columbia-class production. I don't know that you're going to get your Democratic colleagues to spend more than what we spent plus 3% or whatever the inflation number is. I don't know if we can afford it because Democrats won't spend. You and I agree we should modernize all parts of the triad and maybe add a new leg in space, but we're just not spending the money because Democrats don't want to.
You know, that's a mission that I've embraced in my time in the Senate and on the Strategic Forces Subcommittee, is to try and get senators from both sides of the aisle more involved in this discussion. And I believe we have in the Senate. You'll see support for our modernization to keep us on schedule when it comes to the triad and the platforms that we have. There is buy-in. There is recognition of the threats that we face and just what we need in order to address them. Remember, we have two peer competitors when it comes to our nuclear forces, Russia and China. We didn't have to face that before either. Yeah. And as I said earlier, when you look at the aggression, the testing, the pokiness in the eye, that the Chinese are blatantly doing now, I think, at least on the Senate side, people have stepped up.
Senator, they've never lurched. China has never lurched for first strike ability before. And I'm a veteran of the Reagan years.
They danced around it. That's kind of, what we thought was their posture when it came to their nuclear forces. And they've shown clearly that is not their posture.
Well, that's what your op-ed is so eye-opening about. It looks like they're trying to get first strike capability and counting on American incoherence to allow our triad to decay to the point where they could Pearl Harbor us. I go back to the era of the MX missile debate when it dominated Time magazine, and we used to look at those charts, and the American public understood the number of missiles that Russia had, the number of missiles the Soviets had, the number of missiles the Americans had, and the fact that we had survivability. I don't know that we do except at sea right now. What do you think?
I believe we do. I think we have strong capabilities. As I said, I think each leg of the triad serves a very unique purpose. And so that's why I'm definitely a huge supporter that we modernize our triad, keep it on schedule, and be able to hopefully even speed it up. But there again, you get into the manufacturing of what we need and what we are facing there with time limits, constraints that we have, and not being able to, no matter how much money you're going to put behind it, it would be a challenge to be able to speed it up to any substantial degree.
Senator, is the B21 Fleet on schedule? That's our strategic bomber. And do you think the Columbia class will get into the water when we need it to get into the water? Because I have read astonishingly alarming stories on our industrial base. It's just not there. We've allowed it to disintegrate.
I worry about that all the time. And I think it's important to keep funding, as I said, with the modernization, to take into consideration and be able to fund with the inflation costs that are out there, to make sure our industrial base knows that we are committed to certain programs and they need to keep them online. All of those play into the timeline that we have.
Now, Senator King is a serious guy across the aisle when it comes to strategic security. Who else works with you? Because you need 60 votes to move anything forward, especially on the appropriations side. And the House can support you right now in a defense budget that's serious about the deterrent. But who will be the 10 Democrats who come alongside of the 49, or the 11 Democrats who come alongside the 49 Republicans to vote for a serious defense budget?
Mm-hmm. I think when you look at the last 2 years, the budget that President Biden sent to us, and the overwhelming support that we had in the Senate Armed Services Committee to add to that budget, to increase it, because again, there's an understanding there of the needs, and to see support on the floor too. Senator King is wonderful to work with, and we have a great working relationship on the Strategic Forces Subcommittee. Our staffs work well together. We have a kind of a mind meld when it comes to what we need. There are a lot of other good members out there. Jean Shaheen is great. Jack Reed is a good chairman of the committee. Mark Kelly is an active, good member on the Strategic Forces Subcommittee. So there's a number of good members on both sides of the aisle.
I got the 4 there, so I hope you can find me 7 more Democrats who are serious about deterring China from ever thinking about Pearl Harboring us, because they look like they're building that capacity. Senator Deb Fischer of Nebraska, always a pleasure to talk to you. I have tweeted out a link to her must-read article posted at Fox News this morning. It'll wake you up more than your cup of coffee. Go and read it, America.